The Oklahoma Sooners, after last week's victory, now find themselves squarely in the college football playoff conversation. Big win now has new life in this team, both offensively and defensively, and they're riding that emotional high. One of the biggest upsets in recent history, going on the road. Of course, not necessarily by margin. They were just a 6-point dog against Alabama, but just the significance of that win, having it in Bryant-Denny, for Brent Venables and for this team, can't understate just how significant it was. It was in some ways kind of a program definer. It snapped a 17-game home winning streak for Alabama. It handed second-year coach Kalen DeBoer his first ever loss at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So in one afternoon, Oklahoma goes from being kind of a bubble team to now a team that's a playoff lock if they can take care of business at home against Missouri and LSU. And the path is very clear. There is no margin for error. This is a college football playoff elimination game for Oklahoma. And for the Missouri Tigers, this is about validation for them. Because if you look at the Tigers, and they've had a pretty good year. I mean, there's some hollow points to what they've accomplished under Eli Drinkwitz. Now, they're 7-3, and there's a lot to be really proud of with what Missouri's turned into. But a lot of those wins haven't necessarily come against teams that are top tier. And you're going to look at a lot of these victories and several of those teams, if not maybe all those teams, they might be teams that won't even go bowling in some cases. And their only true tests against real high-level SEC competition, they lose to Vanderbilt. They lost pretty significantly at home to Texas A&M, and then they lost a close one to Alabama. So this trip to Norman, this is Missouri's last big opportunity to really legitimize the season and to earn some, I think, very reasonable respect. So this is big. And also for Oklahoma, too, this is kind of a trap game scenario, is it not? Just a little bit, just because of the emotional toll that last week's game took and the physical toll that it took as well. I mean, it was an exhausting victory, and it was the high point of their season. Now they got to go home, 11 a.m. kickoff, which is a time slot that's a little notorious for kind of dampening the crowd energy. So they're going to have to ramp it up because this is an opponent that is very capable, especially on the defensive side. Question number 1, can Missouri's rushing attack generate success against an elite defense? Now, this is a classic strength-on-strength confrontation here, on paper at least, because if you look at Missouri's offense, they're a top 6 rushing attack. They average over 240 yards a game. They have a super elite running back in Ahmad Hardy, who's already this year surpassed the 1,300-yard mark. And last year, by the way, he had an amazing year at ULM. He went for just 1,351 yards. He's just 5 yards away from eclipsing that total, and he might do it on the first carry of Game 11 for the Missouri Tigers. So he enters this game with a lot of momentum, too, because he's coming off of his best career performance, a historic 300-yard game on the ground, 3-touchdown game on the ground against Mississippi State. That was the best in school history, or at least in this century, since 1998. So haven't seen a game like that for Missouri in quite a while. And this is an elite rushing offense now that's set to collide with a super elite defensive front. I guess you could call them kind of a brick wall along the front. They're a top 4 rush defense in the country. They give up just over 80 yards a game. They are fundamentally dominant, and on a per carry basis, there's few better than the Oklahoma Sooners. The one thing, though, about Missouri's offense is that you look at the numbers, they're amazing. And you look at Ahmad Hardy's production, it's fantastic. But against the best defenses in the SEC that they've faced, it hasn't been quite as good. Against Alabama, for example, they had just 52 rushing yards. Hardy did. Against Auburn, he had just 58 rushing yards. And if you look at kind of the case study here, you look at the per carry average for Hardy against Bama, against Auburn, against some of those defenses, a lot of those carries weren't super productive. And this is an offensive line that, while it looked dominant against Mississippi State, they didn't get a ton of push against Alabama, against Auburn, against some of the better groups that they've seen so far. So this Missouri rushing attack, it has yet to really showcase that it can go toe-to-toe with some of the best defensive lines in the SEC. Now they'll get that opportunity going against Oklahoma that is probably the best and deepest group in the entire league. Question number 2, if the run game is ineffective, can Matt Zollers get it done? Now, Oklahoma, they're going to sell out against the run. That's what Brent Venables does. Their run defense is going to neutralize Ahmad Hardy. That's going to be A1A when it comes to them putting this plan together, which is going to put a lot of the pressure on the true freshman quarterback, Zollers, who's 19 years old, and this will probably be as hostile of an environment as he's seen in his young career. And I think Eli Drinkwitz, the Missouri coach, and his OC, Kirby Moore, they probably know that. They know their quarterback's going to have some limitations. Guess what all true freshman quarterbacks do? It's to be expected. So the goal of this plan is probably going to be to create some easier opportunities for him, to get him into a bit of a rhythm, and to put him in really favorable situations where he doesn't feel the mounting pressure that this Oklahoma pass rush will likely bring. And if you look at kind of the blueprint that they've utilized so far in the first 2 starts he's made, you look at the Texas A&M blueprint, they couldn't get a whole lot going. And as a result, he looked off target, he looked jittery, he looked flustered, and he finishes the game just 7 for 22 for 77 yards. Offensively across the board, it just wasn't very good. 284 total yards for Missouri in that game against the Aggies. And if you look at kind of the adjusted completion percentages and the numbers there, it was not a good day throwing the football. And then you could fast forward to the Mississippi State game. Of course, very different defensive personnel, but it was a convincing win. And in that game, Zollers wasn't asked to do a whole lot, just 15 passes that he attempted. He completed just 8, but it was an efficient, solid performance. Did have the interception, but it was a much better step. And if that's the workload that's expected of him, he can deliver. But if you're putting it all on his shoulders, that's asking an awful lot to go against a defense that is known for harassing the opposing quarterback. Question number 3, will Brent Venables continue to ramp up the pressure on that young quarterback? Look, we know that Brent Venables, who's the defensive play caller, he's got a Hall of Fame career when it comes to creating problems for the opposing passer. All right, they're going to utilize complex blitzes. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to disguise schemes. They're going to disguise coverages. And the game plan is going to be doing everything that they can do to make this quarterback's life very, very difficult. And if you look at what's been done the last couple weeks by this group against Tennessee, against Alabama, so against Aguilar and against Ty Simpson, guys that are both older, have played a little more football than Zollers has, they did a really good job of disguising some things. They did a really good job of attacking protection, and they really did a good job of ramping the pressure up, especially in the second half against Alabama, where they blitzed Ty Simpson on more than half of his second half dropbacks, and it led to just 80 yards passing in the final 30 minutes after he threw for 240 plus in the first half of that football game. Question number 4, can the Sooner offense get things going against a great defense? Now, by the numbers, you look at this offense, and it's not statistically very impressive. They're 89th nationally in yards. They're 63rd in points. The rush offense has not been good all year, averaging about 130 a game. And the offense and the grind that they've kind of experienced is on full display in the big win last week against Alabama. And the defense is winning the game, right? The defense is pitching a shutout. They're forcing turnovers. They're giving you the short field. The special teams made a couple plays in that game. So the offensive numbers, you'll look at it and say, oh, well, there's just 212 yards of total offense. Well, I think this offense is capable of more, and it might need to be in a game like this because John Mateer, who transferred over from Washington State, we haven't really seen him at his best in quite some time. Now, against Alabama, you look at the numbers, 161 total yards for Mateer, 138 through the air, and for the season, there really hasn't been a whole lot of opportunities for him to just wear people out with his arm. I mean, he has just 8 touchdowns against 7 interceptions. But this is the age-old question when it comes to Oklahoma's offense. Is it that they can't, or is it because they haven't put an offensive plan together that is built to exploit what the defense is doing? I think people saying, well, they can't be a great offense, I don't know if I agree with that. They just haven't been just yet. I think they can ramp it up if they need to. Now, overnight, I don't think this will be a group that all of a sudden miraculously becomes a top 10 offense. But I do think they can be better than what they've shown up to this point. It's a big test this week, too, because if you look at Missouri, they're top 10 in total defense. They're top 25 in scoring defense. And this is a really disruptive front that can get after you if the offensive line doesn't play well. Question number 5, which team will force a big mistake? Now, Missouri's greatest defensive strength matches up pretty well with Oklahoma's offense. They are one of the best pass defenses in the country. They allow less than 150 a game through the air. And that's a bit of a scenario for Oklahoma where they need to be smart. If they can't run the ball effectively, which they might have a tough time doing, then they're going to have to probably throw it around the yard a little bit. And this is a Missouri defense that can capitalize. They had 2 pick sixes last week against Mississippi State. And if you look at Oklahoma's winning formula, we just talked about Missouri's, Oklahoma's winning formula the last couple of weeks, they forced 6 turnovers against Tennessee and Alabama games. Those 6 turnovers resulted in 30 points. That's massive. So a big mistake could tilt the game in one direction or the other. I will not pick this game. I'll be on the call alongside Sean McDonough and Molly McGrath, noon Eastern time on ABC.